Everybody, welcome to Wisdom Wednesdays. I'm Coach Crystal. I hope your week has been shaping up to be exactly what you need it to be. And I hope that you have a chance to just engage in this conversation we're going to have tonight. Tonight, our topic is blessings in disguise. And this topic really came to me because I wanted to do a little bit of storytelling. Sometimes on Wisdom Wednesdays, it's me and teaching a little bit, and then sometimes we have guests. Next week, you can join us, and we'll have Dr. Curtis Jasper on. But tonight, I want to talk about blessings in disguise because over the weekend, we had a long weekend. It was Memorial Day here in the United States. And when I thought about memorials, I was thinking about like, what are we building memorials to in our own lives? And I was also thinking about my father and the memorial that he left by being a man of military status. He earned a Purple Heart on his second tour in Vietnam, where he lost both of his legs, one above the knee, one below the knee. And I was thinking about what type of hidden blessings were in that particular trauma. So let's just unpack this for a second. Let me tell you a little backstory here. My mother and father met in Greensboro, North Carolina when my father was in the military and my mother was going to college. My mother dropped out of college at 19 to marry this handsome army dude who was taking her all over the world and introducing her to new things. And then he went to his first tour in Vietnam and came home fine. And because my father had an athletic, also a gambling spirit, he wanted to provide for his family and went back to war on a second tour. And that's when he lost both his legs. The section of events after that are what I really start to think about when I unpack Memorial Day and this idea of hidden blessings or blessings in disguise. Is that here is my mother from a small town, is my father from a small town in Jacksonville, Florida, and they meet and they have this amazing life. And then, similar to the things that we know about our own lives and following our own purpose, everything we're doing that we think is for ourselves has to have good in it for others. Now, I don't think that when my father lost both his legs on a battlefield in Vietnam, that he thought that would have good in it for anyone. I'm pretty sure at that time he was battling PTSD most of his life, most of my life anyway. And what I know now in hindsight is that probably if my father hadn't lost his legs and they hadn't moved back to my mother's hometown, maybe my brother and I, who are 8 years apart, especially me, may not have been born, right, into a certain set of circumstances, a certain set of circumstances, situations, and conditions that had started to provide stability, a type of stability that my mother and father didn't grow up in, a type of comfort that they didn't grow up in. And so when I think about the blessing in disguise, it's that one, my father losing both his legs provided financially for me to go to college. I became the first person in my nuclear family to graduate from college. That pursuit of a degree, not just from a 4 year institution, but in something that was artistic and something that I loved, was a distinct privilege that my family, I believe, could have only afforded if that blessing in disguise, my father becoming a double amputee in Vietnam, had have happened. Now, we can also look at the other things, right? Like growing up with a father with PTSD is not something that we talk about a lot, right? Because again, I was born in the 70s, but many people weren't naming a lot of the issues, especially emotional issues that we were dealing with. So my father, having been an athlete for most of his life, having been a football player, actually thinking a lot about going into the army to play football, right? Thinking about what he lost, his ability to run, his ability to stand up for a man as he had stood up for his country, was something that I think over time developed in him to be a real abstinence, um, a real kind of barrier or armor to the rest of the world. And so when I remember him, a lot of times I remember a very jovial man, but sometimes I remember uh, really a man that was hurting. And so what that did for me as a woman growing up, watching a man be only his full self in certain conditions, right? Only allowing himself to be fully joyful when there was something outside of him to be joyful about really shaped the way that I started to see myself in relationships. It actually taught me how to lift people up in relationships, how to lift people up when they were not feeling at their best, and then how to maneuver around some of the landmines that were emotional in our house. So when I think about the hidden blessings, much of the things that I bring to my coaching practice and to my clients is a way of listening and hearing and adapting to the thing that I know is inside them. So when we think about blessings in disguise, I'm sure you have tons of them. Things that now in hindsight, we say hindsight is 2020. Hindsight, made you stronger, made you grow. But in the interim, it didn't feel like it. Many of you may also not know that I was one of those quote unquote runaway brides, like canceled a wedding 3 months before the I decline. And that taught me a lot as well. It taught me that the prescription for life events is not always the thing that fits the life you're living, right? And so a lot of times when we think about change, we have to recognize that life changes and so do we. As we're changing and growing, the blessings are that we get more equipped with more wisdom because we've been through more experiences. But also, we have to understand that sometimes the things that we don't get are also the blessings in disguise. So, as I was a 20 something year old dancer, I fell madly in love with a man who thought I was, the best thing ever. And he really taught me a lot about love, taught me about unconditional love, taught me about love without regret, and taught me a lot about how to communicate, how to be open. But in the end, when we were trying to follow the pathway towards what seems like the next step in a relationship, which a lot of us see as marriage, we understood that we were amazing at love, but marriage was not the best thing for us. It was not the union or it was not the agreement that was going to bring the best out of both of us. And so when I look back on that time now, I go, oh, wow, it is amazing to know what it means to be fully loved and celebrated for who you are. And even when you don't capture or ascend or attain the next level of achievement that the world seems or deems necessary for a relationship, it still has value. So blessings in disguise, right? A lot of them may feel or look painful from the outside. Growing up with a father with no legs was not really something that I thought about until other people pointed it out. So a lot of times, what may seem painful may also be your normal. And as your normal becomes something that other people might not be able to handle, you also get a glimpse of how strong you are, how clear you are, and how well equipped you are for the life that only you can live. I distinctly remember one day after a friend of mine had come over, we had like left to go to the mall or something or go get something to eat. And he was like, what happened to your dad? And I was like, what do you mean? He was like, you didn't have any legs. I've seen your dad walk around. I was like, those are prosthetic legs. And he lost both his legs in Vietnam. But we sometimes forget how clear and how simple our differences become to us, and explaining them to others actually gives us a deeper understanding of who we are and what we're equipped to do. I know fully from the depths of my heart that all the decisions that I've made in my life with people, for people, about people, but ultimately for myself, have changed who I am and what I do. Now, the changes in life are sometimes the things we have the hardest time dealing with. And the changes come most of the time not by our own choice. And when we are forced to change, we sometimes don't look at it as a blessing. But when we choose to change, we look at that as growth. And so I want y'all to really think about tonight how you're thinking about living, how you're thinking about changing, how you're thinking about the vision that's growing from you. If we're content to not allow our vision to drive us, then we will be forced to change at some point in our life. And that change may again not feel like a blessing when it happens, but in hindsight, we'll understand that we were not choosing our growth, we were probably choosing our comfort. And when we are disturbed from our comfort, it changes the way that we see where we've been and where we're going. Comfort is one of those things that can be cancerous to our development. Like I said, my family didn't grow up with a lot. Both of my parents come from small towns with meager backgrounds, but at the same time, it didn't keep them from trying to give us the things that we needed. Now, my brother and I grew up in the same house. We took very different pathways in the world, and we have very different battles to face in the world. But at the end of the day, everything that sharpens us, everything that challenges us, brings us back to our core value. And my core value that I learned from my father was to be authentically yourself at all times. And I learned from my mother how to read a room and make sure that you know who is there and if they're there for you. So in those two methodologies were very clear ways about how to thrive and survive, even though they might have looked different on the outside, right? Like my dad had on some overalls and was cussing and yelling, and my mother had on like a buttoned up suit and was giving speeches, right? But at the same time, they were both teaching me how to show up and how to make sure that your words aligned with your life in a way that you could look yourself in the mirror at the end of the day and know that you had done all you could with what you had from where you were that day. Now, I want us to start being able to recognize the blessings in disguise so that we don't get so bogged down with what we're not doing and that we can function in a way that our gratitude becomes our life path. And so that not only can we continue to push forward, but we can dive into the thing, the person, the gift that we have to cultivate. So I don't want you to miss it. Right? We're talking about these blessings in disguise because I don't want you to miss it. And I don't want you to think that anything that you've done has not made you better. In our practice, we talk about sacred friends, and sacred friends could be people, they could be places, they could be things, they could be habits. But ultimately, we have to face those sacred friends because they're either making us better or refining us. Some people refer to these sacred friends as sandpaper friends, people who, or things or situations that rub you the wrong way. But even sandpaper friends are just taking off the rough spots so that your smooth edges can be beautiful and refined and there for the world to see. If you have blessings in disguise that you want to share with us, please feel free to drop those in the chat. Or if you have questions about anything that I've shared so far, I'd be happy to talk in more depth about it. If you're ready to think about living a vision-driven life and developing a vision that has good in it for others and seeing the blessings in disguise and knowing that all of your growth has been for this particular moment, then you should jump over to stepwithcrystal.com and make sure that you schedule your complimentary vision call. In September, we're going to start our final Vision Builder cohort for 2022. We take about 20 people into that 12-week program, and we're going to be really focused on developing a vision that allows you to have guardrails on your life and create a life you love living. If I hadn't done this work for myself, with myself, in communion with others, I wouldn't know how valuable it was. But I know that by understanding all the pathways and steps that I've taken to get here, being a professional dancer, being a little girl from a small town, going through all the no's of auditions um, and applications, uh, trying to teach and educate my parents and people who were closest to me about what it is my life was doing and where I was going, and ultimately understanding love from so many different vantage points. Curiosity, love, trust have been the core values of my life, and they've been allowing me for many years to not just see the good in others, but to fall deeper and deeper in love with myself every morning, every day that I choose to live a life that I love and accept all of the places that I may have missed the mark. I want you all to think about the blessings in disguise that have come from you not having all the things that you thought you needed, like showing up and building and flexing your faith muscle while you're building something that no one has ever seen before. I can't tell you how many times I've explained to people in my family what it is I actually do, or that dance is a real job, or that my experience as an educator and an artist for these many years has allowed me to forge a curriculum to teach other people how to vision in their lives. Vision is what comes first. And before it gets squelched out of us, we want to recognize that it is the original blessing. The one thing that no one can take from you, even if it starts to get snuffed out, even if the light is dim, it's still there. And I'm constantly reminded of that. There's a question in the chat. Hey, Libby, Hi, Crystal. Are you now able to recognize blessings in disguise as they are happening, or is it perspective gained through time and hindsight? That's an amazing question, Libby. I notice a couple things now when I feel like there's a blessing in disguise. It is that something is being asked of me that I know that I can do, but I feel a little uncomfortable about doing, right? And that's usually the time where we know that our gifts have good in it for others. And so there's some times where people will ask me a question and my eyes will tear up a little bit because I think the answer is so palpable in me and it might not necessarily be cohesive to someone else, but it's an experiential learning. And so when I'm starting to share that, I go, oh, okay, this must be why I had to go through that particular hard thing to be able to share it with another person. And so the blessing in disguise, Libby, in those moments is that I actually become a conduit for someone else's growth and development. But then at the same time, I get to own my own experience of pain, embarrassment, whatever shortcoming I may have felt in the moment, and be able to reconfigure that into a place of power and joy in my own life and in my own heart. So thank you so much for that question. Yeah, that's a good one. Sometimes we don't see them, right? But hindsight again, having the ability and the discipline to reflect, right, is a great way to be able to recognize the blessings in disguise. A lot of times we're so busy getting through our day or making things happen that at the end of the day, we don't leave time for reflection. And in our community, we call that just a simple end of day report, right? That end of day report just means that, okay, how did I do today? What did I do well? What did I say I was going to do? And how much of that got done? And it's not necessarily an assessment. It could actually lead you to those small places that say, oh, I didn't get that done because I got into a conversation with someone that really changed my state of mind today, that really gave me more insight on the thing I would have really loved, that really gave me clues for the next step that I should be taking in the development of my vision. Or it just opened you up to a new understanding of how much you have to give and how much you have to offer. Sometimes those simple heart talks that we have in passing, we don't know how impactful they are to other people and for you to actually understand the whys of your life. Why did you have to go through it? Why did you make that decision? Why did God place you here? Many people have thought for many years um, about my placement geographically. And when it was time to leave New York, when I first moved to Vermont, I was a little hesitant and I thought I was giving up on people. I thought I was giving up on things that I had built for many years. I thought I was letting go of the life that I thought I really loved. And then when I was in solitude for a while, after I was isolated from my regular life, the life that I had been living, I started to really clue into the thing that was growing inside me. I started to really tune in to the spaces that I had left empty for so long. I started to notice the places where I had let myself, my regard for myself, fall away. And I had been pouring into so many other areas of other things that no longer serve me. It is possible to be well esteemed and not have love for yourself, right? Back in the day when I was growing up, there was this real push to teach people self esteem. But you can be highly esteemed and not be loved. And so when I started to discover those places in me that had been covered over with esteem, with compliments, with talent, with service, with awards, accolades, I started to detangle those from what was really my core love for myself. And I had to build that back up through an understanding of past, present, and future. I had to start intermingling the things that had happened with the desires I was having, and then putting a practice in place to build a bridge from my previous reality to my preferred reality. And that's where vision comes in. Being a vision coach is not just about the things that I say, it's about how I live. And I think my clients know that, and I hope that you are able to see that and glean from that in these Wisdom Wednesdays. What we want to do here, y'all, is just give you a couple ideas to ponder about where you are in your own development and a way to reframe what we see as failure into feedback. Yeah, I canceled a wedding. It's fine. I know love. And when it shows up again, I will not let it pass by. I will know exactly who it's from, how it's affecting me, how I'm engaging in that precious energy and that transfer. And I will be a great steward of that inside the relationship and my life because everything has to have good in it for others. It's the way we pour out that really shows how much work we've done on the inside. So, in these blessings in disguise, I want you to think about what you've been through, how you're still pushing, how you're still working, but also reflecting on how you can use the content of your life as the curriculum for your evolution, as Remorse says. How do we build bridges from the things we've done into the person we're becoming with no shame, no remorse, to be full of grace with ourselves and for others? Hope tonight we've given you a little bit of something to chew on and to think about. Know that your blessings in disguise are always right in front of you, but our awareness has to be big enough to see the value in the learning and the lesson from those blessings in disguise and to fully take hold of them and use them in our process of growth and evolution. Y'all, it's been a pleasure. Join us next week here on Wisdom Wednesdays where my guest will be Dr. Curtis Jasper. And we're going to talk a little bit about soul care. And we're also going to talk about how we turn triggers into transformation. Talk to you soon. Have an amazing evening. Thank you for joining us whenever you're watching this on Facebook, YouTube, or LinkedIn. And if you're ready to take the next step to a dynamic stage of your growth and development, jump over to stepwithcrystal.com and schedule your free vision call today. I can't wait to talk to you and to keep your vision growing. Have a good night, y'all.